Mrs. Isabel dos Santos, Chairwoman of Unitel Angola, thank you so much for joining On Africa, and welcome to Egypt.
Thank you, Mona, for inviting me.
You're a young Angolan businesswoman and entrepreneur, and you're the eldest daughter of José Eduardo dos Santos, who served as president of Angola between September 1979 and September 2017. What would you tell us about your country, your beautiful country, Angola, which is located in the western region of southern Africa, overlooking the Atlantic Ocean?
Angola is a country that took a long time to come onto its own ways. As you know, we were a country that was strived by war for many years. So 1975 was independence, and then we had decades of war, and only in 2002 we achieved peace. And since 2002 until 2017, we've had a peaceful country, a very beautiful country. You really can see that the country has restored itself. We were the fastest growing economy for a number of years, the fastest growing economy in the world for a number of years. We managed to find a way back to having a peaceful life and to rebuild the nation.
When you mention Angola to Egyptians, I bet many Egyptians would think football rather than crude oil, fish, diamonds. I mean, don't you think that we really need to connect?
Well, we definitely follow with great interest the football, Egyptian football, as you have great sporting clubs here in Egypt, and some of our players have been here, so we hear of the Egyptian league very often in my country, and there's many fans, by the way, on Egyptian players and a lot of interest in what goes on in Egypt. Angola is a country with a great diversity. Definitely in terms of mineral richness, is as you mentioned, we have almost all the minerals from gold to iron, copper, diamonds, and of course it's also a country where fishing, yes, absolutely. It's a big fishing industry, 1,200 kilometers exposure to the ocean, Atlantic Ocean, and the current, Benguela current, is the cold current that comes all the way from the south of Africa and goes up along the coast of Angola, and that is a very rich fishing current as well. But it's a very diverse economy, and I think the opportunities in terms of tourism are also there.
So what's missing? Because the more I travel inside Africa doing coverage for On Africa, the more I see commonalities, similarities, and even differences that can make us integrate easier. What do you think is missing?
I think we're very similar to Egypt in a way. I have the opportunity to work very closely to somebody who worked in Egypt for many years. The CEO of our current company, a telecom company, was CEO in a telecom company in Egypt. So we often compare the both working environments, what it is like to work in Egypt, what it is like to work in Angola. And we find that we're very similar. In a sense, Cairo is a very large city with millions of people, the same as is Luanda. Luanda is the capital of Angola. And again, we find the same phenomenon of millions of people.
Over 6 million now?
Yeah, over 6 million, going to 7, and by 2025, 10 million people. So it's a real urban challenge in terms of growth, development. How do we manage the city? How do we build the next neighborhoods? How do we make better neighborhoods? Issues like transport that are very common. Issues like traffic jams, we have the same issues. But when you look at the whole country overall, and you think what you can do in a country like Angola, there's a great deal of possibilities of investments. For example, the fact that we have a growing middle class, so there's no doubt that the consumer boom is there. We also have a very young population, so a baby boom population, so future services are also needed for those people. And when you ask me what's missing, well, I think really what's missing is more initiative. Is people with the guts and the will to go and establish themselves, and obviously run the risks and build their dream.
What do you think of relations between the peoples of Africa? Like, do you think that they are still at the level of first-track diplomacy, at the level of presidents, and that we need to go further? We need multi-track diplomacy, different levels like media, religious people, etc. I mean, why is it difficult for us to connect? I mean, we rarely know much about each other, to tell you the truth.
Yes, it's very true, Mona, and I agree. I think we have several obstacles there. The first one undoubtedly is a logistics one, because to travel within Africa is very difficult. I mean, just for me to come to Egypt, when I had to look at how on earth would I come here, it would involve 4 different flights. So really very difficult.
Where did you go first?
Oh, wow. You almost have to go to Europe.
Yes.
So we first have to go to Europe, then probably go to Turkey, and then come back to Africa again. So in a way, the connectivity for us is a big challenge. I think we need to be more connected. We really need to think, can we build these links south-south? Can we provide the traffic? And you're right, I think a lot of our relationship has been very political, in terms of governments being very aligned in their vision of a more progressive Africa, of an Africa going forward, of Africa's role in the world. But now perhaps is also the time for us to think as companies. And I like to think that the companies are like the new armies. They're like the new ways we're going to go and conquer territories. And if we think that we could have Egyptian companies go and establish themselves in different parts of Africa, or African companies coming and establishing themselves in Egypt, through them, I think you can really build a bridge. And this is what we need, because we need a people's bridge. You know, a bridge that's simple enough for us to relate.
You've been described as Africa's richest woman and Africa's first female billionaire. Your take on this?
Well, I think there's great taglines, definitely taglines that attract a lot of publicity. Some of it, the publicity attracts is definitely the wrong type of publicity. I think today when we look at these taglines, we really must think what is behind them, what are we trying to achieve, or the people who write these taglines, what are they trying to achieve? And there's no doubt that there is a sense of criticism in a way where people from the outside want to project or portray the economic elite in Africa as being away from the African reality, and that's not true. I think on the contrary, today Africa's business people, or businessmen, businesswomen, are more than ever engaged in their communities. They're investing in their communities. They're building factories, they're providing jobs, they're involved in building logistics networks. They're really making a difference. And when you look at the growth, the GDP growth in the African economies, most of it is coming from the private sector. And who is driving that private sector? Well, more and more is the African business people driving the private sector. So when I look at this tagline, I like to say and think that perhaps this tagline would be better constructed if it also addressed the issue as how much are we, the African business people, African businessmen, businesswomen, contributing to the growth of our countries.
So how can one become a billionaire?
I always like to think that there is this kind of misconstrued idea that there's billions of dollars lying around in bank accounts. Well, unfortunately, they're not, because all that is done when you are evaluating a company is, in fact, you're looking at the company's assets. So when you speak about the entrepreneur, you're not necessarily looking at the entrepreneur themselves, but you're actually looking at their companies. And in a way, there's a great recognition. And we have to really take that on board. There's a great recognition of African companies now being worth something. So the value of African companies. And this is fairly recent, because until 2 decades ago, African companies, African businesses were not evaluated. People didn't look at their valuation. They didn't look at what would they be worth. And today they are. And that's a great change. So there's no doubt that the valuation of the African businesses and being now able to become global players and having this international recognition has given Africa a status, a market status that is important.
You started your own business by creating a company in 1995, and you've run several companies, and you have more than 20 years of experience in business and senior management. What were the challenges?
I was actually thinking of that question this morning, and I thought, I have to look back and think of myself when I was 20, how difficult it was to start, because I guess many young people are probably asking themselves the same question. I've now finished university, I'm 20 and so years old, what is my next steps, what can I do, how can I start? I live in Africa, I probably don't have access to banking credit, I don't have a lot of money, but I have a great idea, how do I start? And there's no doubt that you have to have a plan, you have to be very, very persistent. When I started, Angola was still in war. You mentioned 1995, I started a little bit earlier than that. And there was very difficult days. There was no banking system. We probably felt that the city would collapse and fall under the enemy's arms in the next few months. There was a real sense of difficulty and crisis. And despite all of that, I think that when you have a plan, you have an idea, and you have a belief, you have to start. And I always give the advice to my nephews, start small. Whatever your idea is, even if you have a very, very big idea, don't start as a, don't want to have the world in one day. Start small. Test your idea first. Make it grow organically. So easy things like don't run unnecessary risks. If you can avoid renting something, if you have an uncle that has a house and he can lend it to you, use your uncle's house. If you have a free backyard where you can set up a shop or where you can set up some kind of a service, maybe use that. So look around you first. Try to minimize your risk. Try to minimize your entrance cost. And most of all, really have a very good plan and have good people with you. Have a really good team with you that is going to be there and is going to help you in all the moments that you need. Because doing it alone is also very difficult.
Yeah, many entrepreneurs ask the question, where do I go next? What do I do? And what's the key to success?
Perseverance, and do not take failure as a stop. I mean, failure is a lesson learned, and you have to build from that lesson and go forward. And it's okay to fail. It's actually great to fail, because if you don't fail, you will not succeed.
As a businesswoman and an entrepreneur, have you ever felt that you're being treated as the wrong gender simply because you're a woman?
Oh, definitely. I think I have suffered an incredible amount of prejudice, and for all the wrong reasons. Gender, definitely one. Many occasions I'm the only female in a boardroom or the only female in the business environment, even the only female in a conference. Just recently I was in a conference with emerging market leaders, and I was, again, the only woman. And it's hard to be the exception. I don't think that's good. I think we need to have more women entrepreneurs. I think we need to have more women in leadership. I think women are very, very capable. When we look at young girls in school, they often outperform boys in maths and physics. Women are also wise. They have a nurturing nature, so they take care of others better. They have great social skills. And I think this encouragement, really bringing up the confidence of young girls and young women that one day they too can lead, and one day they too can make a difference, and they have the right to build their dreams. That's key.
What's unique about a businesswoman's perspective?
Well, I think instinct. I think women are very much driven by instinct and a lot of courage. I think women are particularly courageous, and maybe it's through their nature, for the fact that they have to persevere and endure, bringing up small children and as a mother, bringing up small kids, it's a tough job. So I think nature prepares us for that in terms of personality. But most of all, I think that women have a great sense of community, and also are extremely good teachers. I like to think that a woman is like an encyclopedia. So the richer the book, the better she is as a mother, and the more she can contribute to her society. And having women in places of leadership, for me, is quite a natural thing. When I look back at my companies, most of the places of leadership, at least half of the members of the board are often women. And that comes naturally. I don't necessarily discriminate in any way or form, but it comes naturally because it's just a question of recognizing talent.
Since 2005, you have had relevant interests in telecommunications, retail, finance, as well as the energy and beverage industries, both in Angola and Portugal. Could you highlight some of your key projects?
Well, when I started back in 1995, as I mentioned, this was wartime, so there was no telecom. We had one fixed line network and one very small mobile network in Angola. And of course it was very difficult to communicate. And as part of a business solution for my business, and in that days I used to run a logistic business, I set up a walkie-talkie network. So it's a radio network, or a Motorola walkie-talkie network. And with that service, I quickly realized that there were other companies that also wanted that business solution. They also wanted the walkie-talkie, the radio, the ease of being able to connect. And so I started selling those radio networks to other customers. And eventually, when there was a license that became available in Angola, there was a tender, there was a bid. We were one of the companies that bid for that license. There were a number of BDs. But those were hard days, 1998, 1999. The war again was very strong. And we were lucky. We won the license, and we were able to build the network. I've always been very passionate about technology, because I think that technology can be a real driver of change. And especially when I look back at my experience in Angola and the way the telecom industry has really revolutionized everything from consumers to education to health and especially financial services. We bridged the gap we were really able to go from having a network of 30, 40,000 fixed lines to over 15 million mobile lines. But I like to think beyond mobile. So it's not just mobile where you think, oh, I can talk or I can send an SMS, but really about all the data and all the digital transmission that's behind. And it's this data that is a huge enabler for business. And when we look at this data availability and the capacity of transmission to be able to use the highest end fiber optical networks that are now laid down in the ground in Angola. In Angola we have over 10,000 kilometers of fiber optical networks laid down by Unitel, by the company that I work with. And when we look at that capability, what that can do for business is tremendous. I'll give you a very small example. You're a farmer, and your farm is about 300 kilometers away from the city. You can be in immediate contact online all the time, 24 hours, with the supermarket to find out what are the supplies that they need, what should you be spending or sending to them, and what kind of boxes do they want. So not only can you send your orders, receive your orders, but then you can do more. You can actually do your payments. And you're doing your payments from 300 kilometers away. You don't need to go all the way to the town, to the city, to the mall, because you can use the bank account again through the fact that you have this connectivity. And the greatest thing that we're doing now, and this is a fantastic project that I'm very excited, it's actually the fields, the farming fields.
I didn't know that you have strawberries in Angola.
Yes, we have strawberries. Yes, we do. We're going to be running the farming fields by Wi-Fi. So all the irrigation systems that are connecting the farm will actually be connected through Wi-Fi. And this is fantastic because we can really achieve massive savings in terms of efficiency, water efficiency, and running efficiency by this connectivity. So we can really go from land to office, to shelf, to supermarket, all of this using the data and the connectivity that has been set up.
But like, in what way will this help the farmers? I mean, do they have connectivity in the first place? Do they have Wi-Fi in the first place?
Absolutely. So we've laid down, we've laid down 10,000 kilometers of high-end fiber, optical fiber, and that connects all the cities in Angola, so all the capitals are connected, and it runs through kilometers and kilometers of agricultural land. And what we're doing now is we're starting a pilot project where we actually connect these farming communities to the networks to allow them to connect to the rest of the world.
And what do they grow?
Well, fantastically enough, I have to say Angola has been developing its agriculture faster than expected. Despite all the difficulties, I think we still have a few challenges. I think it would be great if we saw some further help in terms of subsidies or even in terms of access to foreign currency to be able to import things like seeds or fertilizers. But we grow everything. Great pineapples. I would like to believe the best pineapples in the world. They're not sour. Fantastic bananas, amazing. Mangoes, extremely high-end mangoes. Lettuce, all the vegetables you can imagine. Now, Angola has many, many rivers. It's a very green country. The arable land is hundreds of thousands of hectares of arable land, most of it untouched. And this is a true potential. I think that the agro-business and is definitely the business of the future.
But what's the story of growing strawberries?
Of the strawberries? Well, the strawberry story is a love story. I went to the province of Lubango, so it's on highland. Most of Angola is 1,300 meters above sea level, and this particular area is 1,500 meters above sea level, so it's very high-end plateau, quite chilled weather, so the weather is a little bit like in Chile, you know, not very warm, very big temperature drops. And I was driving around and I passed a small farmer's home. And we stopped by and we said hi, and we met these two brothers. And they were fantastic two brothers. They were growing strawberries, but at a very small scale. And we started talking and bouncing off ideas. And I realized that there were two young entrepreneurs there. They were needing of a backing, and all they needed is somebody who believed in them, who believed in their project, and most of all, who had a vision and who could take that small farm from being local to global. And this is what we did. So we invested very little money. To be honest with you, I think our initial investment was less than $100,000. So we invested less than $100,000, and in the end of that year, our turnover was over $3 million. So if you can see, as I say, you can really start small, but you persevere, you can really achieve.
And are they sweet?
They're fantastic. You should bring your box. Yes, they are. Maybe I can export some to Egypt if we get a connectivity of the airline, the logistic links. We have to get Egypt Air to go to Angola, or Angola Airlines to fly to Egypt.
Yeah, this would be great, because sometimes we get the strawberries here that are a little bit sour.
Yeah.
Angola is one of the biggest oil producers worldwide, and it is Africa's top oil producer, competing with Nigeria. Sometimes Angola beats Nigeria, and sometimes Nigeria beats Angola. Between June 2016 and November 2017, you were the chairwoman of the board of directors of Sonangol, Angola's state oil company. What's the story of the company, and to what extent is it true that it was in a pre-bankruptcy situation?
At the end of 2015, in December 2015, the government realized that the national oil company had gone into serious trouble, mainly driven by the fact that the oil prices were very low. Not only had they been low, but they had been low for a long time. So they had been low in the past, but not for such a long time as they were in 2015 and the beginning of 2016. And that created a big impact in terms of revenues. So Sonangol's revenues had dropped 40% overnight. That was a huge drop. At the same time, its costs had stayed the same, because very little adjustments had been done to the costs. The company was not ready to deal with this issue. It was not ready, it was not resilient. And in fact, the government had to come and rescue the company, realizing that it's such a great national asset. Angola has the foremost oil reserves in Africa. And ensuring that this company would be sustainable and surviving was key. So for that effect, they took the decision to find a team that would be a team that would come in with different set of skills and experiences. Myself, I was chosen because I came from the private sector, being used to working for many decades in the Angolan environment, so knowing very well the Angolan economy, but also knowing very well the international economy, as I've set up a number of businesses overseas, in Europe and elsewhere. So I came in as someone that was coming in from the private sector and really a transformer, somebody who had done transformation, large transformation of large groups in the past, and could restructure the company to make the company more resilient. There were many challenges when we arrived. The first challenge was that the situation was a lot worse than what we thought. Initially we thought there was just an issue of revenue drop, but then we quickly realized that also the commitments that the company had made for the future were commitments that probably, if nothing was done, it would not be able to fulfill. So looking at issues of investment and CapEx, how do we make sure that we invest in the right things? The company had been investing in issues that were not necessarily oil and gas. For example, airplanes, health services, housing projects, hotels. A lot of investment went into non-oil and gas businesses. So we said, let's refocus. Let's make sure that whatever money we have, we're actually going to invest back in oil, back into gas. And we achieved an investment in oil and gas in 2016 of $3.6 billion, and 2017 an investment of around $3 billion. So during my time in Sonangol, we committed over $7 billion of investment directed only or mostly at oil and gas. This allows us to do a few things. When we arrived, the ALNG plant, so Angola Natural Liquid Gas Plant, was not working. We ensured that it started working. We commissioned it, and we're able to do the first exports of LNG worldwide. It's now a fully working plant, and it's delivering and exporting all over the world. We also looked at issues like gas to power. You know, Angola is a net importer of fuel, and most of the fuel it imports actually goes into generators to generate electricity for people's homes. So it doesn't go into cars, it actually goes into, the fuel goes into generators to generate electricity, as we have a large energy deficit. Now that was contributing to a very high bill, monthly bill on imports for our company, for Sonangol, on a monthly basis. So we looked at, can we use the gas, since we now had the working gas facility, can we use now this gas to, instead of putting fuel into the generators, start putting the gas. So we did gas to powers. We converted the generators from fuel to gas, and that allows us a monthly saving of about $70 million, which was huge. Another thing we looked at is really ensuring that the services that had been contracted, and they were contracted back in 2012 and 13, where market conditions were different. if we could renegotiate those. So basic things like, for example, boat rental, renting a boat to transport your people. Well, the rates to transport people in 2012 were actually higher than the rates to transport people in 2017 or 2016. So we turned around to the business providers and says, will you rebid? Can we do a new tender? Can you reduce costs? And we achieved about a 50% cost reduction through that. For example, the issues of running a platform, an oil platform, or renting a rig. Renting an oil rig back in 2012 was about $450,000 a day. Today, the market price is under $200,000 a day. So to be able to capture those savings, because the savings were out there. We didn't create those savings, they were already out there. And what we had to do is capture those savings and transform those savings into cost-saving measures for the company. And we were able to reduce over $1.8 billion in costs in the company, and that made a tremendous difference. So I think that yes, we were in a pre-bankruptcy stage, it's true, but I like to think that through my 17 months that I was there, not only myself, because I had an excellent board of directors, really a great team, people that came from IOCs, so people that were Angolan, mainly Angolans, and they came from IOCs, from other international companies such as Exxon, such as Chevron, Total, and they came on board, and I couldn't have wished for a better team. And I think together with them, those 17 months, we have really turned around, as much as we could, the company's future, and undoubtedly put it into a more sustainable path.
You were exonerated from Sonangol, Angola's state oil firm, in November 2017. Your take on this?
Yes, I think our work was going well. I believe that had we had another 6 months, the company would have been a different company, and we would have been able to give back a company with different results. But I think that a lot was achieved, a lot was done. And I like to think that there will be continuity, that the company will continue to strive to become a better, more resilient company. In terms of the generation, I think we really lost the shareholder support. I think the support of the shareholder that we needed was full support, and the vision perhaps changed. And I think it's actually normal because it's a dynamic environment. Business is flexible, politics are flexible, and that flexibility is necessary. And the new vision and the new political vision undoubtedly probably recognized a different path from Sonangol than the one that we were building.
Today we're in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, which is hosting the Africa 2017 Forum entitled Business for Africa and the World. It's organized by Egypt in cooperation with COMESA, the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa. How significant is the forum?
Mona, I'm very excited to be here. It's my first time in Egypt. I've dreamt to come to Egypt many times. I've chosen Egypt as my destination for holiday, to bring my family on several occasions. Unfortunately, it had not materialized yet. And being here today, it's really fantastic. It's a great opportunity. I'm discovering a beautiful country. I'm very impressed with what I've seen so far. The development, the infrastructure, the level of hotels, and it's a great opportunity to be here and to meet over 1,000 leaders, market leaders, but also politicians, influential people that make a difference. And I think that venues like this should be done more often, and it's a great initiative. And I'd like to thank the President of Egypt for having invited us to be here, and for me personally to be here and to be able to take part as a speaker today.
So what's the message then? Your message?
I think as Africans we stand united, and we will provide our own solutions. We will design them, we will implement them, and we will ourselves as Africans build a better Africa.
In what way? Through African solutions or more?
I think African solutions are becoming a lot more innovative than the past. Africa is no longer inward looking. African business leaders, African politicians are not inward leaders, they're innovators. They're people who are challenging every single day, asking the right questions and setting up the right model. No, I don't think there's one single right model for each one of our countries. Each one of us has to think, what could we do? But a lot of lessons can be shared and learned. I think there's a lot of lessons that I will learn here in Egypt, and I will definitely be sharing with my team back home on how we can improve and things that we can benchmark from Egypt to Angola.
What's the focus of your topic then?
I believe we're discussing investment in Africa and some of the things we touched here today, the challenges. And we have many challenges because each of us has different politics, so political is different, regulatory environments are very different, tax environments are very different, legal environments are very different. We in Africa speak a multitude of languages. You speak Arabic, we speak Portuguese, some people speak French, some people speak English, so definitely there's a lot of language barriers as well, and culture being an issue. We all have different cultures, but I like to think that there's a lot of things that divide us, but there's probably a lot more things that unite us. Our sense of community, the fact that we are actually very caring, that we are people that help each other. I know that in Egypt it's a little bit like in Angola, everybody has a big family, and the sense of family and big family reunion is something that people really treasure.
Because in Nigeria it's so big, right? To tell you the truth.
Well, maybe not as big as Nigeria, but I would say it's actually quite significant, yes.
Like 10 in one family?
I think that the current number statistics are probably showing 6 to 7 in a family. So definitely larger than families in Europe, but perhaps not the largest families in the world.
Africa, young people, 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 25. How important is the Africa 2017 Young Entrepreneurs Day, which is part of the Africa 2017 Forum? It was the first day in Forum.
Again, a fantastic initiative. I believe that these future leaders in business and in different sectors of life, of African life, these are really the true key to our success. So investing in such people, making sure that they have access to forums like this one, where they will meet and hear the different speakers that'll be here today. It's the right thing to do. It's definitely the way forward.
What would you tell us about lessons from Angola, especially after the Civil War and during the reconstruction periods?
I think we have great lessons learned, a lot achieved. When we look at the thousands of kilometers of roads built, or the hundreds of schools built, the dozens of universities built, we have over 10 million students in education. That's a fabulous number, 10 million kids in education, that's huge. So when we look at all of that, I think we have great achievements, but I think we need to plan and prepare better for the future and to maximize our resources, because our resources are not finite. We have small resources, and to take the most value of our resources, we really have to plan and spend more time planning before executing.
Egypt is a member of COMESA, the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa. Angola is a member of a different regional economic community, which is the Southern African Development Community, or SADC. As a businesswoman and an entrepreneur, how are you benefiting from Angola being one of the member states of SADC?
Absolutely, yes. I think there's a lot of regulation that comes through SADC and a lot of alignment that is key for business. When we look at certain political cooperation agreements that are signed, those are very important agreements. And the SADC region itself has been performing very well. Most of the SADC countries are growing and have been exhibiting stable growth, and also very stable countries from an economic point of view as well as from a political point of view. So I view SADC as a region of great interest and great potential.
But what do you think of regional economic communities? Do you feel that they are really benefiting the people? I mean, I've been traveling inside Africa, and I don't think that people in Africa really understand what COMESA is doing, what SADC is doing. Maybe the businessmen, but really.
So it's a concept hard to translate. It's true, because probably there's not a lot of tools or a lot of issues that touch the common man in the street in a simple way. So the regulation does, alignment of policies does, but it maybe does not yet translate to those simple things like traveling. Can we have a visa dispensation, or can we import goods with lower tax barriers? So perhaps in that sense it doesn't yet translate, but I think we're building a road. You know, the first good thing that happened is that we did create these regional areas. That was the first positive thing, that we're talking to each other, We're recognizing the different opportunities, and we're setting forward a road for trade. And putting that road for trade, trading, looking at the trading barriers, looking at employment issues, looking at having agreements, even currency agreements. I think these will little by little trickle down and translate onto the common person in the street.
The landmark tripartite agreement between the three regional economic communities, COMESA, SADC, and the EAC, was launched here in Sharm el-Sheikh in June 2015. It created the largest trading bloc in Africa, with 26 countries, a combined GDP nearing $1.2 trillion, and a market of close to 620 million consumers. What do you think of such a trading bloc?
2015 is early days, so we're talking about less than 2 years ago. Great start, great start. I think we'll see a lot of results coming through an association like this one, but it will take a little bit of time. It will take a little bit of time because the issues are not simple. They are not simple, and trade is not something that can be forced. Trade is something that has to make sense. It has to make sense for you, it has to make sense for me, and recognizing those opportunities and recognizing how we could work together will undoubtedly take time. And that recognition comes through dialogue. So the first thing was done, recognition and dialogue. I think all the rest will come in its due time.
What are the investment opportunities and business opportunities in Angola, and are you looking for Egyptian companies to do business with?
Opportunities in Angola are several, and Egyptian business and Egyptian businessmen are very welcome. Angola has a very open investment policy where it allows for foreign companies to come and settle and to be treated fairly. We have a long tradition of foreign companies investing in Angola and doing profitable business and being able to grow their business forward. And it really depends on which sector you look at. But whether you go from agriculture, where we discussed agribusiness and having farms irrigated with Wi-Fi, or whether you are interested in issues like construction. In Egypt you have great construction companies, or issues like logistics and be able to focus on distribution. I think all of those really are opportunities that lay there forward.
It's very interesting, the Wi-Fi business, that you're talking farms being irrigated by Wi-Fi.
Absolutely.
This is excellent, really. How easy is it to do business in Angola?
It's not easy, but I think it's not easy to do business anywhere. I like to think that business is not easy. If business was easy, then probably there'd be a lot more of it out there. I think business has its risks, and it has its risks like anywhere else. Doing business in Angola, or doing business in Egypt, or doing business in France, or in Dubai, or in South America, it all carries its risks. And as a business person, that's what you do. You analyze your market, you study the risks, you do a market study for your product or for whatever your initiative is, and then from that, your decisions.
The 2018 World Bank report on doing business indicates that Angola ranks 175th globally in terms of the ease of doing business. Somalia is at the very bottom of the list. It ranks 190th globally. Your take on this?
I think we have to improve that. We must improve that. We have to really pay attention and make that a priority. It is undoubtedly a handicap for us to not be a place that is recognized as a place of easy business. We really need to think, what else can we do? What we can improve? Now, a lot of the parameters that are measured in such an index are parameters that are related to regulatory issues.
Yes.
And I believe that there is a great effort now being done by the authorities to look at those regulatory issues and to see if they can overcome and provide and create a better business environment. I understand that this year we were 2 places up, so we improved by 2 places in the list, and hopefully by next year, if we talk again, we would have improved even more.
You went to school in Angola?
I lived in, yes.
In Luanda?
In Luanda, yes.
Yes.
So I was born in Azerbaijan. When I was born, my father was still a guerrilla. So my father was part of the liberation movement. I was born before 1975, and Angola was not an independent country. And my father had run away to become part of the freedom fighters for Angola. He entered the MPLA movement, and so I was born during those days of the independence, of fighting for the independence. And that was, unfortunately, that could not be in Angola, because in those days my father was the authorities were looking for him as a young man who was trying to fight against the established power, which was the colonial Portuguese power. So we arrived back in Angola in 1975, in November, where when the Declaration of Independence was pronounced, and I've lived in Angola since 1976, since those days.
Luanda is the most populous Portuguese-speaking capital city in the world. When I watched you speaking, you talked a lot about Luanda in one of your speeches, and it was very impressive because I felt like it reminded me of Cairo, to tell you the truth, the challenges. And I know that you're very much into urban development. I mean, can there be any kind of cooperation between Cairo and Luanda in this area?
Well, I think you touched probably what's going to be Africa's single biggest challenge, which is going to be our urban development. How do we build our cities? Because ultimately as people, for us, where we live and how we live, our environment, is what really matters. When we make money, when we receive our salary, we probably spend it on three things: food, shelter, and clothing. So shelter is always there, it's top two. And we need to think, how are people going to be living in the future? How can we plan the cities? The demographics are working against us. In Angola, we're growing from a demographic point of view at 3.5% a year. That's huge. The population is booming. In Egypt, you have a similar challenge, the demographic challenge. So how do we look at the cities? How do we anticipate the growth? Can we go in? Can we plan the cities better? Can we make sure that we are able to deliver the infrastructure such as road networks, water, sewage, electricity before the city is built? Can we anticipate the growth? And that really comes from urban planning. Unfortunately, I've recognized through the work that we carried out on the Luanda Master Plan that very little urban planning is studied at African universities. There's actually very few degrees or courses done in urban planning and in city management. We're not managing our cities the best we can, and we're not doing the urban planning the best we can. On the Luanda Master Plan, this was a project that started in 2009 by the government of Luanda. So the governor of Luanda ran a tender process where he invited a number of international companies and local companies to submit a bid towards what would be Luanda of the future, so the capital of the future 2030. And what we looked at was the population growth. How will this population grow? Where will this population be housed? Where will they be living? But not only about where they will be living, but also where they will be working and what are the employment opportunities that the city will allow them to have. Because if you don't have employment, you cannot have housing. Because you need to buy, you need to pay for your house. And you need to also be able to afford and pay for the infrastructure through your taxes. So when you look at and think of cities, you really have to think of everything. Where will people live? Where will they work? Where will they study? And most of all, where will they play? So public spaces. Extremely important in a city to have public spaces of high quality. It provides us a sense of dignity, also a sense of security, a sense of belonging, a sense of community. And then looking at issues like our heritage, our culture, to make sure we treasure all the things that matter to us, that were there are legacies from the past, and they are so crucial for our education, for the future generations, and really being able to draw a map, which sounds like a challenging job, and it is, because we, for example, for Luanda, we looked over 20,000 documents. We had to review over 20,000 documents. We conducted more than 3,000 interviews with different people. We did public consultations. We went into the neighborhoods, spoke to people, listened to their aspirations. It was extremely important to make the city plan their plan, something that they recognized themselves in. And it was really good to have this interaction with people because they said, what really matters to you? And I remember this one lady, she said, I'd like to have a kindergarten. Like, okay, so kindergartens are important. So that means that when you plan a neighborhood, you have to plan from the beginning, where's the kindergarten going to be? Not only where the school is going to be or where the university is going to be, but also things like that. Then we spoke to another group of young people, and they were worried about where could they go and play football at the end of the day. And then we said, okay, so we need to also think about the parks. We need to have public parks that are well structured and they're part of the neighborhood. And traveling. People were saying, well, to go to work, I travel 1.5 hours. I'm stuck in traffic for 1.5 hours. So mobility. How do we connect the mobility and connectivity? And definitely looking at mass transport systems where we can transport a lot of people over a short period of time so that they can go to their destination and be at the destination with much faster traveling times. So drop the 1 hour in traffic to 20 minutes in traffic. And most of all, a very clever but very simple concept. If you bring the home closer to where you work, you could probably walk there, or you could probably take a bicycle. So let's not think about cities where we're going to put housing in one end of the city and business and industry on the other end of the city. Think of neighborhoods that are much more integrated. So within your whole neighborhood, you could work, study, live, and play. Well, I was very proud of this work we did because I got very passionate about it. The more I understood, it was a learning curve. At the beginning, it was not my field. I'm an engineer by training. So it was really a learning curve, learning more about city planning and urban planning. And I think we were very proud because we won the best master plan in the world for the Luanda city. And we were very proud with that achievement because, not because of the prize, but the recognition that one, the issue was important, and two, that this study that we did for Luanda could then be used as benchmark for other cities, not only in Africa, but in other continents as well.
Isabel, what do you think of leadership in Africa?
It needs to be inspirational. Leaders in Africa need to be inspirational. They need to be able to gather the right type of emotions around them. It's very hard to lead when you don't serve. So you have to serve first, and then you have to inspire. And I see more and more that we're having better leaders in Africa. I think we need to recognize the different types of leaderships we have, not only political leaderships, but also leadership in the arts, leadership in education, leadership in business, and we need to recognize different sectors of leadership that are coming through, and all these people that are really being to be the game changers and driving the change in our communities.
What message would you convey to businessmen and entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs?
For the older businessmen, I would like to really, for people like myself, I already consider myself an older businessman.
You're young.
Business person. Definitely to build businesses in a more responsible fashion. So looking at your responsibilities as an employee, making sure that your employees are treated fairly, that they're trained, that they have career paths, that you're actually developing talent, that you're enabling talent, and thinking of your business as a kind of a small, growing field where for future talents, where other people will come out of your business and then build other businesses. And then for the younger entrepreneurs, is really to persevere, recognize your environment, persevere, be very analytical, look around you. When you have an idea, look around you, see if somebody else has done it before. If they have failed, why they failed. Can you do better than they did? Don't take a huge amount of risk when you start. Really start small. Like I say, start small, even if your idea will grow big. Don't start big, start small. And to really believe in their continent. It's a continent that has everything to go right.
And what about women entrepreneurs?
I've been following the most remarkable women entrepreneurs in Africa. And looking at what they're doing and thinking, this is just fabulous. It's really amazing how there is so much drive, I think it's very important that we also, from a political point of view, establish equal rights. There is still a big issue in many African countries where women are not given an equal opportunity. And that, for me, has to come through policy. So we have to guarantee that we have policies that allow equal treatment in jobs. Equal pay is still a big issue. Making sure that there's no discrimination for girls when it comes to school. Something that particularly concerns me is that women or children, when they're young ladies, drop out of school to take care of their brothers and sisters. So when they're 12 or 13, the brothers are given preference to go to school and they stay home and they're not given an education. And I think as women entrepreneurs, we really have to stand for that. And we have to say that that's not right. And we have to support and see what we can do at our own level, on an individual level, even if it's just to touch a few people, a few families, but to ensure that these girls do get an education and that women stay very much a part of society, an active part of society.
What are your hopes and dreams for Africa?
I think really I like to think of my children of not having to choose anywhere else in the world to live but Africa. And if a choice was given to them, they would say over and over again, I'll only live in Africa because it's really what I love and what I believe in and what I can build.
Mrs. Isabel dos Santos, Chairwoman of Unitel Angola, thank you so much for joining On Africa, and it's a pleasure to have you in the Red Sea Resort of Sharm el-Sheikh.
Thank you, Mona. It was really nice meeting you and having this conversation today. Thank you.